I can see that Jeremy took me very seriously when I said it was the Groundhog Edition. I actually, okay, I'm going to have to challenge Jeremy to provide something interesting for our title, our Get It Started page. So together with the Groundhog, we welcome you to First Tuesdays. Now we have a bit of housekeeping to do. The Office of Financial Management here at the state asks us to figure out where, when we give presentations, where people come. But before I should introduce myself, my name is Carolyn Peterson, and I'm a First Tuesdays facilitator here at the state. Our technical producer today is, if you have any issues, please take down both Jeremy's phone number and email. And if you all of a sudden can't happen, you can't hear, something goes wrong, Jeremy is the fellow who can help you. And he's very good at what he does, and so don't hesitate to reach out to him to help him solve your problem. There it is right there in chat. And now Luke has indicated that he will take questions as they occur to you, so go ahead and type those in chat, and we will, I'm going to call Luke's attention to them if he doesn't see it. I'm going to be monitoring the chat. And so we'll have opportunities for questions as they occur, and then, of course, at the end of the presentation. And now we wanted to acknowledge who pays the bills for us, and that is we are a part of the Secretary of State here at the Washington State Library. And this program is a result of funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to bring interesting presentations like this to a wide audience. So now, what OFM would like us to do, our financial management folks, if you would just please type in what library, your name, and what library you're associated with. So if you're a student, you can say, I go to this school or whatever. But if you would just type in your name and your library organization, I'd really appreciate it. So if you'll do that, and once we get that out of the way, we'll begin. Okay. Once again, we have folks from all over the country, and we appreciate your interest and appreciate your willingness to join us. So, please continue to type in what library you're with, and we'd appreciate that. And in the meantime, I'm going to let Luke get started. Luke Ellington is the Teen Services Manager and the Bookmobile Supervisor at North Central Regional Library. And he's going to tell us how North Central Regional Library ended up with some Makerspace printers and what they did with it. So how they created a mobile Makerspace. Luke, we're interested to hear what you have to say. The mic is all yours.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much, Carolyn and Jeremy. Are you hearing me okay?
Your mic jumped up again for some reason.
It wants to go very high. I can whisper if I need to. I apologize if I sound out of breath. It's because I am. I lost all my images to this presentation about a half an hour ago, and I appreciate the help of Jeremy and the folks here at my office to get this put back together as quickly as I could. So hopefully this is all together in one piece. I work for North Central Regional Library, as Carolyn said, and I am going to talk to you today about the Mobile Makerspace program that we created with grant funding and what that looks like and what we're doing today post-grant. I won't have any polls using the polling features here today, but if you have any questions at any point, please raise your hand. I'll try to answer them as best as I can at that time, or I may let you know if I'm going to be addressing that later and ask you if I answered it when we get to that point. So the grant that we utilized to create this mobile makerspace was a digital skills training grant. And the purpose of this one was for providing training and resources to directly enhance the skills of patrons to improve their ability to navigate an increasingly digital world. This was a great fit with our organization's mission to promote reading and lifelong learning, and it created a unique opportunity for us to develop some team programming. We had relatively recently established a separate team collection and some team spaces to hold those collections. And this was an opportunity to really target that community throughout our 5 counties with programming intended for them. Angela Morris and Barbara Walters, administrators here at NCRL, formed a committee. We've had individuals coming from our IT department, the administration, myself from the bookmobile, and individuals from our largest public library branch in Wenatchee. And we got together and talked about what we could do to target teens and follow the intention of this grant. Our main limiting factors, as we looked at, from the outset to try to serve teens, is, the vast space we're working in. The distance between the branches and also the numbers. I think at that time we had 29 branches. Now we have 30, and these are spread over, as you can see in the blue region on the map in the lower right-hand corner, some very large distances. Wenatchee is located about here between Douglas and Chelan counties, and we were serving areas as far away as up here. One example is a school at Orient that I'll talk about here in a little bit. Actually, that's right over here. So, and the other factor, of course, is staff time. Thankfully, this grant did allow for some substitute time, so that made this possible. We came up with the idea of a mobile makerspace. I'm not sure where that idea originally came from, probably from library literature of similar spaces in other library branches, and of course we wanted to make this something that could travel, essentially, so we came up with the mobile makerspace. I'll break down. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with what a makerspace is, but I encounter individuals all the time, of course, that still wonder what that word means. It's a bit of a buzzword, and I think it's used pretty loosely and for a lot of different museum programs, library programs, schools. So just in a nutshell, a maker, I define as a person who makes something. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And a makerspace then is simply a place where a maker can make something. Now, sometimes makerspaces are more craft-oriented. There's makerspaces that focus on sewing. You have more tech and hobby shop type makerspaces, and ones that are more computer electronics based. Sometimes terms that you hear for these different kinds of spaces are hackerspace, hack lab. Fab lab is actually a coined term, but generally refers to fabrication labs in general. But the exciting thing about this for our use is the fact that a makerspace is about creating a free-form, do-it-yourself, collaborative environment, a learning environment where you have creative tools, materials, and peers, individuals, makers that are accessible, learning together. And what this allows you to create is a community in this learning space that gets invested in a shared learning goals. This was really exciting, this idea for us, that we could create this space in our library branches, bring this environment to our various spaces, schools and public library branches. So what we came up with was the Mobile Makerspace, which is essentially just a portable, transportable learning environment. We wanted to be able to set something up at our library branches and bring this to our teen communities. We needed this to have a small footprint. We needed this to be easy to set up and take down, something that was easy enough to load in and out of one of our company SUVs. That wouldn't weigh so much that it was going to hurt employees. We needed to be adjustable. And it goes with the small footprint idea. Some of our libraries are very small and have very small spaces that we could utilize. So we needed to be able to work with what we had and flex and adjust. And we really wanted these, of course, to promote collaboration between the users, between the participants, the patrons, and also with the library staff that we're guiding. And we wanted these to be very engaging to teach skills. So the grant that we wrote, I'll read the project abstract that we came up with. The NCRL Mobile Makerspace for Teens will provide educational programs at rural NCRL branch libraries and community schools to foster the development of digital literacy skills. Teens will learn skills that will be useful for future careers by learning about programming and design for robotics, digital photography, music and video production, and web design. That was our abstract, and we were awarded nearly $39,000 by the Washington State Library and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations to do this. And this was a really exciting time for our organization. I was identified as one of the trainers as we wrote this up, so I was super excited that's me there, to get this off the ground. But here's what we had facing us. We had 6 months to buy all of the materials that we said we would buy, to develop the curriculum that we would use, the script, so to speak, when we're out in these branches. Our schedule, we need to schedule all these places, work it around our library and school schedules, advertise them so people would show up. We initially identified 4 library branches and 7 schools, but that became a flexible topic, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We had to collect and maintain survey data. We had to get substitutes to replace our 3 trainers. I was one of these. We also had our IT manager and a circulation supervisor from our largest branch as trainers. We had to track and report all expenditures and submit progress reports to the state, and of course actually put on these events and teach the skills at them. So it quickly became a pretty daunting affair. And I'm sure, as anybody here knows that's been awarded a grant, it's bittersweet in that it's a very exciting time, but also a very busy time to get these off the ground. And ours was particularly an ambitious project for our organization. And so this leads me to my main warning, number 1 for the day. Don't attempt 2 ambitious grant projects at the same time. We got ourselves in a situation where we had been awarded 2 grants through the Washington State Library within a relatively short amount of time. One of these was also teaching digital literacy skills using 3D printers. So at the same time that we were trying to get the Mobile Makerspace off the ground, we also had Make It Now 3D printer workshops across 10 of our library branches during effectively the same time period. This was a fantastic program. I would love to talk more about 3D printers. If any of you have questions, we used initially an Ultimaker, but we've now begun to test other 3D printers and to put these in some of our library branches, which I'll talk about later. But this actually wasn't part of the Mobile Makerspace program, and so I'm going to leave this. But like I say, I'm happy to talk more about this later. So let me go ahead and flip back here. I purposefully left out one item out of this area here. One of the many things that we had going on that we needed to do was train the trainers. This turned out to be really the most time-consuming initially of all of the things that we had to do. We needed to get 3 librarians that were working in 3 different locations, including myself, traveling most days on a bookmobile, to become experts in Eggbox, Adobe Photoshop and its accompanying green screen, Raspberry Pi and breadboards, Lego Mindstorm Robotics, these are EV3 kits, audio and video production equipment and software, and web design. And this is a depiction of how I initially envisioned the process happening. I thought, oh boy, we're going to get these great pieces of technology, and I will get to spend a week becoming an expert in all these things, maybe more time. And it just didn't work out that way. This quickly turned into to this feeling of despair and strain on our myself and the other two trainers, trying to work this learning into our regular jobs. And so we finally got together and, oops, some of my notation didn't carry over. We shifted our mindset on what our role was. And this came right out of our core concept of what a makerspace is. We decided that we no longer needed to become the trainers that needed to be experts in every single bit of technology. What we needed to do was become facilitators, capable of guiding participants, but not necessarily being experts. And this fits with the Makerspace concept because we decided early on that we didn't want to teach a class. We didn't want to host workshops. What we wanted to do was to create that do-it-yourself experience. We wanted to let our participants figure out what they wanted to learn and help assist them in that process. So we worked together to share our ideas. Just like participants at a Makerspace, we got involved with different pieces of technology, and then as we got excited about maybe something that the ABOT could do, we would share that with the others in our training team, facilitator team. And so in that way, we were able to tackle a lot of this early on and get enough base knowledge to be able to create our curriculum and get on the road, which was important with given the number of locations we needed to serve. So here's an example of a curriculum that we created. This was the first one, and so the format of our Mobile Makerspace, again, was to load up gear in an SUV and to take this to our location, to set up the space, and to create sort of stations, multiple locations in one open space where individuals could pick and choose and bounce back and forth between technologies. And so this first curriculum that we created involved the AGBOT, Mindstorm UV3 kits, and Raspberry Pi. And I will go over each of these and talk more in detail about what we did with these and what it looked like in practice. But this curriculum, I'll just touch on some of the main ideas here and let me know if you have any questions. We really wanted to track our time, and so we attempted to keep track of that. And of course, things flexed as we went to each location. But we came prepared with all of our materials, and this was a really important thing. Keeping track of all these materials and storing them turned out to be, some pretty big issues that we had to figure out early on, because arriving 3 hours away from our home base without one cord could, break an event. And so we would create these 3 stations with everything we needed. We initially did an introduction and welcome so that everybody would have an idea of what we were doing. We explained that it was a hands-on making experience, loosely structured to allow for maximum creativity and exploration. It's easy for students who are used to a classroom setting to feel like they need guidance for each step, and so it was interesting to see that some individuals would be hesitant at each event, waiting for us to tell them what the next step was, and what they should work on. And it was really exciting to see them begin to, love the format of choosing and deciding that I don't want to work on, say, the Raspberry Pi anymore. I'm going to switch to the Mindstorm at will at any event, or back and forth. We had a poll, participant poll, that we did as a group by showing of hands at the beginning of each event. And this is our way of getting a base indicator of what skills were coming into the room. Generally, we found that individuals in our situations had not had any experience with these technologies, with the exception of the Mindstorm EV3s, which are popular with the First LEGO League. If you're familiar with First LEGO League in schools and other school uses, those seem to be pretty popular. We would give a brief talk, about 10 minutes, although sometimes it took a little less. But we talked a little bit about what these technologies were and how they applied in the greater scope of things. Raspberry Pi lends itself really well to this kind of conversation about very inexpensive computing and what can be done, what is being done with small circuitry. This is just the next page on the curriculum. We introduced our participants to what we would be doing. So we would always demonstrate, say, for the eggbot, we would demonstrate designing on one ornament or ball. And I'll talk about how that eggbot works here in a little bit. We would show them what the LEGO Mindstorms would do, what the Raspberry Pi could do, and field any questions about the basic use of these. We would also assign challenges. So this was a great way to get individuals started, letting them know, say, with the Mindstorm, that they, challenge one maybe to, program your LEGO Mindstorm to drag forward 1 foot. And challenge 2 might be to go forward 1 foot and turn. And so in that way we could get them started and then often watch as they came up with their own challenges or went more free-form in what they were doing. Ongoing, participants were allowed to switch, like I say. I mean, I can't stress that enough. The beauty of the Makerspace format is that individuals are choosing what they want to do. No one is feeling forced to do anything going on. They're working together, they're sharing, and it was fantastic to see consistently individuals, students maybe who are at the same school but different grades, don't normally talk, working together, sharing ideas, asking each other questions. It broke down a lot of barriers. We had staff or volunteer check in with each participant, usually multiple times in every event, to ensure that they were engaged, that they had something to do, that they felt comfortable with what they were doing, and answer any questions they had. Often their questions took us beyond our knowledge. That was so common at nearly every event, and in those cases we would work with them with books that we had brought along. We're trying to search on the internet for those answers, getting teams assembled of participants to try to answer those questions, and becoming peer learners with them, which I think is a powerful tool. All right, and participant survey. Ask them to complete this before leaving. We had this here, the very last thing, hand out the survey, and I think by the end of the process, I was handing these out about halfway through and then checking back multiple times with each participant. It was the case that, toward the end of the event, when parents are arriving to do pickups or teams are getting in their own cars to leave, it was nearly impossible to get these surveys back at that point. So we shifted and tried to get these done earlier on. I'll show you an example of a survey here in just a bit. Are there any questions about this basic curriculum before I move on? Okay. This is an example of one of our ads. We were setting up events in library branches and at schools and working with some of the Gear Ups here at Washington State programs here in our local schools. This is a program that I worked on myself during this grant cycle. I was part of the grant cycle, but it was something I did solo, independently, I should say, to go to a local nearby middle school, Cashmere Middle School, and host an after-school program. It was 3 to 3:50 after school. It was we had a sign-up sheet, but students would drop in as well, and we would go over usually 1, maybe 2 of these. So this broke the format a little bit, but I wanted to just bring this up. We were really working hard to stay true to the grant, but also look for opportunities where we could change the format just a little bit from how we had initially described it, still meet the goals, and get these tools to teens and preteens, in this case, in our communities. This I just wanted to point out. So I think when a lot of people hear the term mobile makerspace, I know I've had questions, especially because I drive a bookmobile and I'm accustomed to groups coming into a vehicle space. I think it's common for people to wonder if a mobile makerspace is a traveling mobile unit that the individuals would go in and use technology. Those things exist. They are amazing, and I would love to have one here at our library and take that on the road. But this is what we created, the program I'm describing in building spaces. This is the vehicle we use, just a Ford Focus with some Mobile Makerspace decals, and this trunk here that I set out is just a case to protect. This is the kind of case we would use to protect our laptops as we traveled, and we would just get all of our gear assembled in the back and load and unload this before and after each stop. So I will jump right into what this looked like in practice, because this is really what it's all about. What did we do with these things with the participants? I'll talk first about Eggbot. If you're not familiar with Eggbot, it is this tool you can see down in the lower left-hand corner. The Eggbot is a small robotic device that is capable of drawing on a spherical object. So we had great success using ornaments, Christmas ornaments. Of course, if it was, in summer we call them summertime ornaments or Groundhog's Day ornaments or whatever seemed to be fitting. We had a lot of Christmas designs, but we also had a lot of sports or I love you mom or just any free-form design individuals wanted to come up with. We had a lot of variety with this. Eggbot, for about $220 for this kind of standard build-it-yourself kit unit, really was an effective tool. This was probably the most exciting, accessible, well-loved tool that we took on the road. So I would encourage anybody interested in developing a maker program, whether it was a kit that you're wanting to send around or something to put permanently in a space, check out the Eggbot. And there's a lot of good resources on the Evil Mad Scientist website, the creators of this thing here. And there's also some additional tools. We use Sharpie markers to draw on all these, but there's also, I believe, some engraving tools and other kinds of ways you can adapt the Eggbot. And I will point out, I wish I had zoomed in to show this, but a little tip that we learned that was really fantastic and a fun way to connect some of our technology. Again, the 3D printer was not part of our mobile makerspace, unfortunately, but we 3D printed an arm that allowed us to use the thicker Sharpie markers. And so, whereas the standard Eggbot would just hold the ultra-fine, we were able to use the thicker ones and get some of these cool metallics and other kinds of Sharpies. And it was a great way to talk with the patrons about, this 3D printer program that's coming next week maybe to your branch. It does this. It created this item for this makerspace, and you can see how the application works. Adobe Photoshop with the green screen. This was also fantastic, but it hit a bit of a different demographic. This was something that older individuals, so whereas in this last image you can see, this is this gentleman here crossing his eyes, he's a much younger participant. He might have even been a son of a teacher at one of the school events. But we had a lot of 11-year-old and up participants. The Adobe Photoshop really connected well with those individuals that were, 13 to 18. It allowed for, I think, the most creativity to flow. The green screen was a fantastic way to get individuals up, moving, doing something physical to pose. I'm not sure if you can see it, but in this image on the left, lower left, you have an individual flying through the sky, being chased by, looks like the Red Baron shooting some kind of missile. And so this individual, he's got a fantastic pose. I mean, I think it took him a good 20 minutes to get this, sort of stretched out flying pose in front of the green screen. This was fantastic. The individual in the lower right-hand corner putting himself in a Minecraft scene, and of course the young lady here underwater on the watermelon skewering unicorn. It was a great program, so I'd encourage you to check this out. The only downside to Photoshop is that it is an expensive piece of software, and so it's not something you can tell people to run home and buy. But I would encourage you to check out a program called GIMP, a free downloadable photo editing software that can work with Photoshop images and perform a lot of the same tasks. Lego Mindstorms. I think these get a lot of attention, so I don't know that I need to talk about these at length. If you're in Washington State, I know the Washington State Library is working to make these available as kits. These are Legos that you can put together and build in different shapes, and then of course they have the computer brains that look like an old Game Boy that you can program manually with your fingers, or you can utilize the computers to work with the software. The programming software functions a lot like Scratch, if you're familiar with coding and programming with Scratch, or Blockly. I recently had a message come to me from a librarian in New York State. She's working with Ozobots, which seem to be similarly applicable robots that you can program and drag around. And those used a program that was the same kind of tool like Scratch or Blockly, where you can put together strings of code in a visual format. And so you can put pieces together that are easy to comprehend, make little changes, and then tell your robot to do it and then see what happens. This had a particularly good appeal in our experience with predominantly boys, but girls as well, and mainly more the middle school age. We saw a bit of a drop-off beyond middle school with interest in these robots. Raspberry Pi and breadboards. Raspberry Pi is one of several very inexpensive, very small, lightweight computers. With the Raspberry Pi, you plug in your keyboard, mouse, and monitor, and you have a slow little computer that you can program to do many things. The applications of this are limitless. It's a wonderful way to really dig into coding. The breadboards allow you to power different kinds of circuitry. We used buzzers and LED lights and had individuals work with programming their Pi to make lights, make sounds. And then there's also software that you can use graphically on the Raspberry Pis as well. This was an area that was not something I was particularly interested in throughout the program, and it was something that I honestly had a hard time learning. And so I was very thankful, because of the diversity of our trainers, our facilitators here at the library. There was another individual that could take this on, and also I can't stress enough how important volunteers are to this kind of programming. This young man here in gray is Theo. He was able to come in as a peer mentor, high school student, working with middle and junior high and high school students to teach Raspberry Pi, and was extremely valuable in that regard. And here, like I mentioned, unfortunately I lost all my images not long before the presentation started, and I put them back in, but I think I missed one here of some web design in action. Audio video production web design I will not talk about much because we didn't really do too much with these. We did more with web design, but it was the case that with the audio and video production equipment and software, we really ran out of time to learn these and get the curriculums made during the cycle. We also, because we launched with the, trying to find it here now, sorry, it's not taking to the curriculum page. That's okay. Because we launched with the Raspberry Pi, Mindstorm, and Eggbot curriculum, we had interest in that throughout our communities. We had librarians who wanted those same technologies that they had seen used in other places. And so it was the case that the ones that we started with became the most popular ones that people wanted on a repeat basis. Okay. So throughout the process, we wanted to be really intentional about collecting data and using that as an assessment tool during the Makerspace program, of course, but then also to be utilized afterward. And so the main ways that we collected data were our pre-event participant poll, the group poll where we asked individuals to raise their hands. The main, most useful tool I think we have was really just observations in real time on the ground, seeing what the turnout was, how and why participants became engaged with different tools, what they did with those different tools, and what kinds of skills were developed. And we could watch and track that very easily, seeing individuals start from square one and watching them progress to a point where they could, you know, say with the Mindstorm, knowing nothing about programming, to getting it to drive around and do what they wanted it to do. And so we got a lot of great data from that, and we're able to make you know, tweaks and improvements upon our curriculum throughout the duration. We also did the post-event survey, which I'll switch to next, and got responses written out in paper from all participants as well as the volunteers at each event. And feedback from the site host was also invaluable. Talking to our librarians or school staff after these events was very useful. They came away with information that they could see that maybe we as the trainers couldn't always see when we were, you know, right in the trenches working with the teams. Okay. Just want to see if there are any questions I need to answer here. All right, thank you, Carolyn. So this is the participant survey that we used. It may have taken other forms, but this was initially how we set out with it. We asked our participants to identify which tools they had used, because we did switch them up and use all of these at various points, although, like I say, the video and audio recording was used only briefly at a couple events. We saw, when we asked how difficult the projects were, we saw the full range marked, and that was really good to see. I mean, we felt like we offered, because we had, you know, generally 3, sometimes 4 different stations, and because there were various challenges, and because each technology you could utilize in different ways, we saw that participants, you know, some of them came away, you know, being having learned a lot in one, but not in another, feeling like maybe one was hard to get into, but then another tool was just right. We saw the full range, and that was good. And we often would talk to participants to ask them to elaborate more on what aspects of each technology were maybe hard or easy, and what they liked best. I think consistently we saw an overwhelming yes to the enjoying of the mobile makerspace, and of course we saw that on the ground. What we generally heard from participants as to what we could do to make it better was more and more often. We had fantastic response throughout this program with participants, with individuals in our community, schools, other organizations, and the consistent theme was that people loved what we were doing and they wanted it more often and more at every event. Okay, so where all did we go? These place names may not mean much to you if you're logging in from another state or country, and maybe even if you're in Washington State, you may not know all of these. But I just wanted to represent the variety of places that we went. This differs, as I mentioned before, from the initial goal that we had set out for the number of schools and branches. I think we saw more library branches as sites and fewer schools, but we did a lot in schools, including the Kashmir Middle School after-school program that happened 8 times, Tanasket High School up in Okanagan County to the north, and schools in Wenatchee, and many of our library branches. Orient School was a neat story for me especially, and I want to touch on that here after this slide. I will also say that in addition to the Mobile Makerspace programs as part of the grant cycle and the Make It Now 3D printing project, taking the 3D printer to 10 library branches, we also took a Mobile Makerspace and set up at one of our libraries, Moses Lake Public Library's 50th anniversary celebration, which opened up our tools kind of for the first time really to adults, and we got a great response there. We were involved in the City of Wenatchee's Maker Showcase, something we hosted at our administrative building here, and as the City of Wenatchee was involved with the Mayor's Maker Forum. And we also did a staff showcase, helping our staff to know what it was we were doing, because all of this was very new to all of us, and because we had the 2 grants, there was confusion between what the differences were and who was doing when. So the showcase was a great opportunity for us to talk about what a makerspace was, what we were doing with it, and show off those tools and also the 3D printer. There's also a public market here in Wenatchee that we were able to take some of our technology to and support an event that they did for a Lego building competition. Orient School holds a special place in my heart. As the bookmobile librarian for the last 3 years, I've been doing monthly trips as part of our rotating cycle of trips to Orient, Washington. And if you look in the upper right-hand map, Orient is near the Canadian border in northeastern Ferry County. It's about a 4.5-hour drive as the bookmobile drives from Wenatchee. And so this is just a massive trip. And this school is wonderful. I've got multiple grades working in each classroom, just a great little community that's invested in their school. And I wanted to see our Mobile Makerspace get to this school. So we were actually able to load everything up in the bookmobile, and as part of a regular bookmobile visit where the classrooms would be coming into our bookmobile, I took all the technology in and worked with their oldest grades on Photoshop. We set up the green screen. You can see this individual here is photoshopping himself and a friend standing on the back of a giant deer. This is just a great event, and really for me captured, one of the things at the heart of this program, getting this new, and for Photoshop, not even necessarily new, but standard industry technology, what's being used by professionals to these small rural communities that aren't seeing this technology. Okay, I've talked about a couple issues that we faced throughout this process, but I will touch on a few more here. Avoiding disaster, pitfalls, things to watch out for. My first one is don't juggle two similar, novel, time-intensive grant projects at the same time. I say that, but at the same time, for us, it worked out in the end. It was a lot to manage. It created a lot of confusion because we were introducing so many new concepts, tools, and types of programming. It created confusion for our library staff in the branches, knowing what event they were going to be getting and which grant that was a part of. Confusion for those of us learning the technologies and trying to learn so many at the same time. And confusion even for patrons who would think they were coming to a 3D printer event when really it was a makerspace or vice versa. And so ideally, you would want to separate out how many things you were doing at once. But like I say, we covered a lot of ground, we made it happen, and the outcome was wonderful. Ensure you have enough learning time. If you're really wanting to learn this technology well enough to instruct in it. And of course, it's always embarrassing, when a child or a teen asks a question that you have no idea how to answer. But as librarians, we're tasked with answering all manner of questions all the time. So it's just part of the job. You will not be able to be prepared to answer every question when you go out to do these types of events or have them in your branch. But find volunteers who can be the experts, because that really is the way to get community buy-in, to get people who can focus on their skill sets in each technology. And for us, it was invaluable. Community partnerships. We had great partnerships working with local schools, the Gear Up organizations in those schools, the city of Wenatchee, several different cities, and museum. Make someone take photos. I can't stress that enough. That was probably one of the most difficult things that I found at every single event, was to actually take one photo of a 3-hour event. I always had the best of intentions to take some photos and rarely ever did. The downside of that is that then when you want to show your board, show your supervisors, show your community, put on a webinar, when you want to show people what you've done, it is very difficult if you don't have images that can really express better than words can what was happening at these events. So I encourage you to have someone take those photos, and a local newspaper, of course, is always a great way to see that done. Advertise. As we all know, it can be difficult to get the word out to our communities. Finding ambassadors in your schools, in your communities, to get the message out in as many ways as possible is very helpful. So the results for us were wonderful. We really felt strongly that we had fulfilled NCRL's mission to promote reading and lifelong learning by promoting the development of digital skill sets, literacies, with our teen patrons. They did learn many skills, and that was wonderful. The data supported that. We had really an overwhelmingly positive community response. I mean, we had much more interest than we were and still are able to to act on. And so that's a wonderful position to be in. People want the resources that the library has. And so at this point for us, it's a matter of figuring out how we can get this into their hands as much as possible. And we saw an interest by all ages. We had adults watching, in the wings at many of our events, seeing what we were doing, especially with our 3D printer, but other tools as well. And of course, younger children wanting to be involved with what their siblings and the older children and teens were doing as well. We had great coverage regionally and in small town newspapers. Many wonderful articles came out of this showing what the library was doing. And of course now we have acquired a wealth of useful technology, software and hardware. We have in-house digital skill sets now that we didn't have before. And we got plenty of intensive programming, advertising, and grant management experience. Okay, this is my last slide, and then hopefully there will be a little time if there are any questions. From here, we're hoping to continue to develop permanent spaces. One of the key success factors at the events that we had was that if we made repeat visits to one place and could see repeat representation by patrons, those skill sets would just multiply exponentially. So there's really something valuable to getting a space set up permanently that can be visited on a repeat basis by individuals. We currently have a 3D printing lab set up at Quincy Public Library, which was put into place with some support from Microsoft. We're also working to establish more spaces, more 3D printing and other types of technology in several other library branches this year. We set a goal to see Mobile Makerspaces following the grant cycle hit all 30 library branches, and we have achieved that goal. And that was again a difficult thing to schedule in with so much else going on, but post-grant we were able to see that happen. We'll be working on maker kits, getting some kits available that we can check out to branch staff who are interested in hosting events themselves. And I think that will be a wonderful model that we've got a lot of good resources through the state and other organizations that have been doing this to learn from. And we'll be doing more Mobile Makerspace events to support this year's summer reading program and other events at branches to respond to community interest.
I have a question. And the question is, how did the devices hold up?
Hi, Carolyn.
We are, sending some
Yes.
STEM kits out on the road, and we're wondering how well did the egg bots do? Have you had to replace any of them because they just broke?
They seem to hold up very well. We kept them in tubs. Of course, we tried to secure everything as well as we could, but everything was in the hands of our youth participants, and so things were handled pretty aggressively at times. We never really saw anything fall apart. The IGBOT, the unit we had anyway, came with a toolkit, and there was a good amount of adjusting that we had to do. At events and between events, we would have to realign some of the
I would encourage anybody, if you have questions,
they held up very well.
And we will be happy to, see them, type them in the chat box if you have things that have occurred to you now. The other thing is, okay, now that you no longer have the substitute to do this, you guys have got the skills. How much have you been able to do it? Have regular people been able to take over? By that I mean regular library staff been able to put on these programs now?
It's been a combination of those. We have, because of the permanent space in Quincy, of course, we have staff and volunteers at that branch taking on all of that work. I have not been to Quincy to do any of the 3D printing work, even though I was very involved with the 3D printing during the grant cycles. So we are seeing, like I say, a lot of interest by our branch staff who want to take that on and have begun to do so. We had a librarian in our Republic library who asked for the 8-bot. And so that was before we had developed any kit, but she said, well, send it to me and I'll figure it out and you can talk me through it. So essentially we sent her sort of an 8-bot kit and she was able to put on 2 great events, send it back in one piece, and it worked out very well. And since this grant, I have shifted my role, spending less time on the bookmobile and now doing more team services. So I now have more time to work on these kinds of events too.
So first one is, how much time did you usually schedule for a Makerspace event? About 2 hours? How much?
That's a great question. And I'm going to try to see if I can click back on that curriculum. There we go. So I believe that was the case. We didn't notate the total time on the curriculum. I believe they were right about 2 hours. And again, because we were doing 2 different grants at the same time, I think I get confused because the 3D printing workshop it was 3 hours, and I'm pretty sure the Makerspace was
setup?
2.
It looks like it takes 75 minutes to set up.
Reversed.
How much time were you actually spending with the people who came?
No, setup was not part of that total time. I think we did 2 or 3 hour events, and I think we actually tried both at different times. So I can't say there was just always one way. Setup was not included in that time. So our actual events with participants were 2 to 3 hours. And most of the time participants were there the entire time, although of course if they could only be there part of that time, that was fine as well. Setup, we got better and better, of course, at setup. And so often we could get everything ready in about 45 minutes. And it just depended if it was Photoshop with the green screen. Sometimes that green screen took quite a bit longer to erect in a small library space than it would to just
and
set
then
up.
Lori has a question. She says, can you share what direction your maker kits are going? Topics? How about transporting or shipping to branches?
That is a great question. This is a work in progress. We're actually in the process of acquiring some new technologies, and so I'm really hoping to find some new sort of lightweight things, something small and packable that we can ship around in our delivery vans just as we deliver books out to our branches. I'm interested in quite a few new things, but I know that the 8-bot is one that always it's been consistently appreciated by the participants. The staff have taken a liking to it, and it's a very flexible tool. But I think that we'll continue to probably try several things this summer and test out the response and go from there.
Okay, and Stephanie asked, do you have more participation during the evening versus the day, and did you hold some of the workshops on a weekend? And then what about adult participants?
Yeah. Well, just to touch on adult participants first, for the grant cycle, we were exclusively targeting teenagers. And so like I said, we had adults that were helping, we had adults that would be watching, from a distance at the library events and wanting to participate. But the Mobile Makerspace was a program for teen participants. At this point, though, we would love to develop applications for these with adults, and we're doing that with the 3D printing, at this point, as we get those into branches. During the evening versus the day, we were doing, if we were at a school, those were either toward the end of the school day or directly after school with some of these, with our Gear Up programs, which is a grant-funded program to keep kids engaged after school. So there we had, we had all of our participants there and coordinated by the school. At the library branches, it would generally be after school or evening. And we would do sign-ups. It was pretty intensive with what we were doing, even with 2 librarians on hand with the 3 different stations. We were seeing about 12 participants at each event. And so we were definitely getting those 12, and often we would have a wait list beyond that, even in our very small branches. But any more than 12 at an event would have been difficult to manage and help along the way.
Okay. Well, thanks. We certainly learned a lot. I don't see any, let's see, I'm kind of scanning up. I don't see anyone else typing. This has been a very, as you can tell, we had folks from all over the country who were very interested in what you had to say. So I want to thank you, and will the slides be available? The slides, Jeremy is in the process. As soon as this is over, he will upload them to our archives. And you can, if you go back to the login page on the right-hand side of the page, you will see recent broadcasts. And this program will be the first one on the, at the top of the list. And it usually is up by noon or shortly thereafter. So this is something that, yes, the slides will be available, the entire project there. Jeremy has very helpfully put in the first Tuesday's login, and that's where you can find it.
We have other stuff.
And any other last-minute questions? Yes, we do. We have 8. Well, maybe
9 years.
How many years? 8 years
full
of
years.
programming,
2007 is when we started.
Or 7.
In the very early
but
ones.
we lost. Didn't we lose some of the early programs? They didn't transfer over.
I think the vast majority of them there.
Well, at least we have quite a few years, many different topics, and so we would encourage you to explore all the topics that we have archived on the site. They cover a wide variety, and we thank you for your attention. And Luke, thanks very much. As you can tell, this was a topic of great interest. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Okay. Well, hope to see you on a future time. If you are interested, please sign up on our first Tuesday's list. And then, of course, our topics are broadcast via various state library lists, and I do put them out to ARSL as well. So thanks for coming.